The Minding Your Business podcast is brought to you by the Binge Podcast Network. The Binge here on number 100. That's what we're doing today. Champ Ron, the Minding Your Business podcast, coming to you on July the 5th, 2019, here in the great state of Tennessee, the great city of Memphis. And we've got a whole lot going on today on episode number 100. Shout out to everybody on Facebook Live, everybody that's on Spreaker joining. I appreciate everybody. I get my waves in. As y'all know, those that are listening to the recorded podcast, I got to get my waves in on social media. But thank you so much. Hope that you're coming off a great weekend. You know, the first thing that we got to do.
What we do here is go back.
Yeah. This is episode number 100, baby. We don't want to linger no time. Today, man. We got great things going. Man, I'm truly excited to be here and to be here for episode number 100. Let me go ahead and bring my guest on. Liv, are you out there?
Hi.
Hey,
yes, I am.
Excellent. It's good to have you on, my lady. Olivia Almagro, PR professional. I'm so excited. I'm just bumbling stuff all over the place. Olivia's
thank you.
Yeah. Turn your volume up a little bit if you can.
Okay. It's up. I'm going to put the phone closer to my mouth. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
And I'm so glad to have you. Again, let me set it up properly. Olivia Almagro is many things that she does. She is a public relations professional. And she's joining me today. She's going to co-pilot with me here on episode number 100. So we here. Liv has been very instrumental in the growth of the show. And so I was honored when I asked her about coming on the show today and her accepting. She's extremely busy. She's working with a lot of clients at various levels. And for her to take time out to join in the celebration today is incredible. And so I really appreciate that, Liv, and want you to join in. To all of you, the faithful listeners of the Minding Your Business podcast, I cannot thank you enough. When you look at the numbers worldwide, there are millions upon millions of podcasters and podcast shows. They're starting every day of the week. For a podcast to reach 100 episodes is very rare. Less than 1% of those millions and millions of podcasters make it to 100 episodes. There's various reasons for that. Some of it may be that it was only a series and they only want to do so many episodes. But the biggest thing is some people just don't, like in anything, some people just don't make it. And I'm extremely fortunate to be able to make it to 100 episodes, 100. And so I'm excited about that. There's much more to come. And Liv, we want to get into some things with you, but feel free to chime in as I'm telling this story, Liv.
Sure.
So feel free. But listen, thank you all, everybody that's on Facebook Live. One of the things that I want to do today, let me set this tone. Today we want to, a celebration for the show. I want to recognize all guests. So all guests that have been on the podcast going all the way back to August of 2017. I want to make sure I honor you, give you the proper respects, because the show wouldn't be what it is without you. So the show's not just about me. The show is about all of you and pouring into the audience. And so I want to make sure I give that recognition. I want to talk about the backstory that many of you may not know on how I got to this very point, because I always like to make sure I share that, just so that it could be a best practice way to help you in your walk, whether you're podcasting or whatever you decide to do, right? And then I want to get into some things with Liv, and Liv's got a really good heart and mind for understanding the podcast community, particularly from the influencer standpoint. And I want to get her thoughts on that, and I want her to chime in when she feels the need to. And so that's kind of the rundown of today's podcast. But we're at episode number 100, and it's because of all of you. Entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. And typically, y'all don't know me as the hype guy. I'm a little more Chuck D than Flavor Flav. But I'm going to be Flavor Flav today, baby. Yeah, boy. What's up?
I want to say something.
What's up, Liv?
Something real quickly before you get started.
Okay.
The reason why your podcast is done so well is because of your enthusiasm. And, you're just, the information that you're sharing in your podcast is very timely, it's very informative, for business owners. And I think that the fact that you do it consistently, and you just bring fresh ideas. And I think that, obviously in addition to having great guests, but I think you're not really giving yourself the props that you deserve, because your show, and there's tons of podcasts, but what I find about your podcast, the Mind Your Business podcast, is that, every time that I tune in and I listen, I always walk away with a wealth of information. So I want to thank you for allowing, some of my clients to come on your show to share what they have. But the feedback that I always get from them is that you make them feel so comfortable. And, you have so much personality and so much energy. So I thank you so much.
Yeah, Liv, listen.
For allowing my clients to come on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate those very kind words, Liv. I appreciate the engagement that you have and for you sharing your clients. And I take that with high value because, in today, at any time, but in today's day and time, sharing your clients with someone is not an easy thing. It's not easy for you because you have to have likability and trust with me, right? And so that I'm going to treat your client with the utmost of integrity and trust and honor and that sort of thing, because once you come on here, this is my turf, right? And I've always prided the podcast on, this is not an I Got You show. This is not, I'm not Stephen A. Smith. I'm not Thaddeus Matthews. I'm not Rush Limbaugh. I'm not an I got you guy, right? So I'm not going to ask you nothing to try to pin you into something. This is all about when you get done listening to this show, and you said it perfectly, I want you to be able to take something with you. When I come here on a Friday, this is about taking something with you, processing it through the weekend, right? So I'm not giving you information overload that you got to feel pressure to start making wholesale changes in 5 minutes. You get the weekend to process it, and then on Monday you're set and you're ready to go. And I hope, and that's what my outlook on this was always to be best practices. Okay, and so I appreciate you saying that, Liv, because it goes right into me kind of sharing the story of how I got into podcasting, because I think people will find it interesting. So I'll rewind you back to 2017, MYB. This show started, you've heard me on just about every episode of this podcast give a shout out to Dominic Lawson. And you may say, well, Ron, why would you shout out Dominic? He's got also an entrepreneurship podcast show called The Startup Life, by the way, which is on the Binge Podcast Network. Shameless plug. Make sure you check out the Startup Life podcast, because he's crossed his 100th episode and he's continued to level up in ways that, it's going to be a household name soon with the Startup Life podcast. I'm going to get more to Dominic here in a second, because Dominic's very modest, but I'm going to break him out of his modesty today. But I was on Dominic's show. He asked me to be on the Startup Life in 2017. I was on 2 separate episodes, one with Tia Jennings with the Jay-Z 444 album when it came out, and another one separate. And I was really inspired by the way he went about his podcast. His personalities and mine really meshed well. His approach meshed well. And I just love the professionalism in which he did it, and his tie to the simplicity of using basic technology. I've showed you guys this many times. When I do the podcast, I've got an office phone and I've got 2 cell phones. I'm not in no big studio. I'm not, there's no big ESPN, ABC $1 million setup with what I'm doing. I'm on a iPhone XR. I'm on an iPhone 6. And I've got a microphone plugged into one of them. And the other one is on between Facebook Live and Spreaker. That's what I've got. Very little. I mean, the same cell phone that I use all day long is what I'm on right now. And so you can do this. But when I saw how easy Dominic was doing it, I was inspired. And I had a voice, but I didn't know. I had never, I've never really sung. I haven't really rapped. I haven't done much with a microphone at all other than speak at events. So I was a little timid about getting started with this. And so there's a song that I love. I grew up, I was born in the 80s, came up through the 90s, and I always liked some of the New York hip hop scene. And I was a big Diplomats fan, Dipset fan with Cameron and all them. And there's a song called I Really Mean It that had a crazy beat, you know what I mean? Even going back to the early 2000s. So I made that the theme song called I Really Mean It. And that was as many of you that have been rocking with me know, that it was the theme song. And the name of the podcast was I Really Mean It. And so on August 11th, 2017, I recorded my very first episode of what was then the I Really Mean It podcast. Y'all listen, I hated my voice recorded. I hated it. I didn't like the way I sounded. I didn't like the pace. I didn't like anything. All right. So I easily could have quit. I did the first episode. I did the second episode. I did the third episode. After that third episode, I was like, man, I don't know about this. I go listen to the replay. My voice sound too deep. It sound too light. I'm going too fast. I'm going too slow. You know what I mean? I see y'all laughing. But it's the truth. It's the truth. And so I'm going through those first episodes. But one thing about me, if you haven't learned this yet, you soon will. I'm not one to easily give up. I'm kind of like that coyote, but I'm not chasing no road runners. All right? I'm not chasing no road runners. They move too fast. I've learned, unlike the coyote in the cartoons, I learned that I want to chase something with a little more meat on it. All right? But I'm not one to easily give up. Okay? That's not me. My wife will tell you that. Anybody in my family will tell you that. You got to destroy me. I'm like the Terminator. I'll be back. So I keep going. So what I did was, and what I'm gonna share with you in the theme of best practices, keep going. Okay, keep going. You only lock in your losses when you stop. So with the podcast, I kept going. I was motivated by Dominic. I was motivated by my guy Lawrence Thompson. I was motivated by Josh Midget. I was motivated by Ina Esco. I was motivated by everybody that was in media, Kelly Price, who I interacted with before. I was motivated by everybody, right? Not motivated through competition. Like I've told you, I only competed when I was in sports, and I competed against myself. The defender couldn't guard me in my mind. He can't. He's at a disadvantage. He can't guard me. Same way in business. I can't be guarded. One-on-one in the post, I got you. I got you. You either go foul me, I'm going to score. That's my mindset. And that was the mindset I took with the podcast. I can't be guarded. No. You could be better than me. That's fine. But you can't guard me. And that was my mindset. That's my mindset. I take it to my business. I'm insane like that. I'm crazy. That's how I go. And so I kept doing, as crazy as that sounds, I kept doing it. I was asking people, would you be willing to come on the show? Sharing it with people. I did up little flyers. Shout out to my girl Leslie Thompson with Treasure Graphics. She did my flyers for me. I'm taking those to gyms. I'm taking them to libraries. Anybody, I'm down. Elliot, my guy Elliot Sales was laughing at me. I'm down at the trolley night. Every person, I don't care what you look like. I don't care what you rolled up in. You getting that flyer, and you're getting my 2-sentence elevator speech on the podcast. All right. People ask me, how'd you grow the audience? I grew the audience. It'll sound simple the way I say it, but you have to stay in the game. All right. The very first show, I don't know if anybody listened to that damn thing. First show, first 2 shows, first 3 shows. And if you get into the vanity metrics of podcasting, you're dead. Let me say that again. If you get into the vanity metrics of podcasting, what do you mean, Ron? The vanity metrics is this. If you're going to be worried about likes and shares and how many listens and that sort of thing, without focusing on building the content. Dominic talks about this all the time. And I refer to Dominic as the podfather. He's kind of a little skittish sometimes about that, but it's true. And I'll get into more of that. But he talks all the time about focusing in on the content. You focus in on making really good content. What is good content? That's subjective, right? Good content is Liv just defined it in her comment. Do you leave better than when you came? That's good content. Because think about it, it's subjective. Good content could be anything depending on what you value. If I post on Facebook a video of two babies fighting, that's to most people that's dumb. To someone who wants to see that, that's great content. The few people out there that want to see that. So good content is subjective it's just like beauty. It's in the eyes of the beholder. But what I did was I kept going. And that's what I'm telling you. Whatever you're doing today, keep going. Don't worry about the vanity metrics of someone else has 100 likes and 50 comments and mine's got 2 likes and 3 comments. You're dead. You're going to be DOA if you're going to worry about that. You got to let that go. Let the vanity metrics go. Focus in on what you deliver. I don't care if nobody listen. Focus in on what you deliver because you'll build the audience over time. It takes time. However old you are, you weren't born yesterday and tomorrow you're 40 years old, right? You were born. You crapped in your diapers. You cried at night. You kept your parents up at night. Then you start crawling. Then you start blabbling a little bit, babbling. You talked. You start walking. You go to school. You become a teenager. You become a young adult. Everything has a time, place in it. It's the same with your business. It's the same with your podcast. So don't worry about, Gary V's got 11 million. Gary V will tell you it took him years to get to that. And he was an early adopter of social media. So you have to focus in on what you're delivering, the content. Are you true to what you're delivering? And then, as I'm saying, you got to keep going, MYB. Keep going. Keep recording the podcast. And Liv said it. Be consistent. I'm at y'all every week on a Friday, unless I decide to take off, and I let you know ahead of time. But you have to be consistent. I picked a time that worked for me. Friday, midday works for me. And it's proven to work for my audience. If it didn't, I could make adjustments, right? I'm not on the radio. I don't have a set time of 4 to 5. And if you don't hear me from 4 to 5, you miss me. With a podcast, you can listen to me anywhere in the world with internet and anytime you want. And right now, you can listen to any of these 100 episodes anytime you want. If you want to go back and listen to my first episode, which I encourage you to do, and compare it to today, by all means, please do that. But you got to keep going. People ask me, someone inboxed me and asked me, when did I know that it was a good thing for me to keep going, and when did I start feeling confident? It took me to about my 15th or 20th episode to really feel confident. Okay? Episode number 22 was titled The Culture of Sexual Harassment. That was one of my better episodes to me, and one of my first episodes where I walked away feeling really good about what I was doing. That's episode number 22. Okay? That's not episode 3 or 4. This is episode 22 when I started feeling that way. I felt I had really good content. I had, random guests that were coming on. We were talking about, how everybody was falling like flies from the Me Too movement. Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, blah, blah, blah. Go all that. Matt Lauer had just fallen. But instead of taking the rant piece of how I felt about those men and their situations, I took the approach of what's the best practice that you can learn. What can you take away from that story? As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as an aspiring business owner, aspiring entrepreneur, if you're sitting in your cubicle right now trying to dodge your boss because you're on final written warning. I know some of y'all like that. wherever you are, I wanted you to be able to take the information and then apply it. So not just rant about it and be opinionated of it. But, if you're a business owner, in that episode, we talked about if you're accused of something, how should you handle that? If someone in your organization, that information is brought to you as a leader, as an owner, as an entrepreneur, how do you handle that? That's the episode that kind of took me over the top. That's the episode that took me over the top. That's how I knew I gotta keep going. I didn't need feedback. I didn't need nobody to jump on TV and say I was great. I didn't need 1,000 likes and shares. I didn't need any of that. I knew what I had. I knew it was a winner. Not because I was better than anybody else. I'm not less than anybody else. I'm not better than anybody else. I just want to be the best damn Ron that I can be. On this podcast, in my business, for my family, in this community. So it's not about the perfection. A lot of y'all won't start stuff and do stuff because you worry about being perfect. I went and got a microphone off Amazon. The first microphone I got was $26. Matter of fact, that's the microphone I'm using right now. I went back to it for my episode 100. I give it back to my roots. No different than if I go back to the mound. $25, $26. I don't have no $1,000 microphone, Michael Jackson, gold-plated and silver-plated microphone. I got $26 microphone plugged into an iPhone 6. Right now, at episode 100. So my thing is you got to keep going. You got to stick to it, and you got to be true to who you are. All right. I want to get into, in just a moment, the many guests that I've had over these past 100 episodes. There are two particular guests that I want to shout out in a posthumous manner. One of my mentors, Brunell E. Smith II, passed away in 2017. I had just been playing golf with Brunell 2 weeks before he passed away. We were he asked me to be part of a golf scramble. This is how the energy in the universe kind of works, man. And I'm going to try not to shed tears with this. I'm not going to entertain y'all with crying. Brunell, 2 weeks before he passed away, we met at a Starbucks. I introduced him to a marketing contact that he wanted to get introduced to, that I knew. I bought my man, his favorite drink at Starbucks. And we talked about just life. We talked with the marketing contact, and then after that meeting, he and I talked a little bit, and he said, man, listen, I want you to come out and be part of this scramble team with me. Me and a few other brothers went. It was the next week or so, and we had a great time. Matter of fact, Brunell was hitting the ball beautiful that day. It was a beautiful day, sunny day. We went, we played 18 holes. It's part of a fundraiser. That was the last time I saw my man. I had known his dad since I was a tadpole at Boys and Girls Club. I used to go, when I was a boy, I used to go watch Brunell them at Whitehaven play. At Whitehaven High School here in Memphis. Brunell passed away, man, and I did an episode to shout him out. And so I appreciate his insight and everything that he did for me throughout this process with this podcast, because he was an early encourager of me doing it. He used to call me RB. He said, RB, man, listen, if you got it on your heart and mind, man, you got to do it. Blank what everybody got to say about it. Blank, how many people's this and that, whatever. You got to do it if it's on your heart and mind, because you've got a voice to deliver. And that's all I needed, man, from a brother that was 10 years older than me. A real one, man. Brunell E. Smith II, man. My other brother, Jason Daniels of Titans Electrical. He was on episode number 33. Jason was a brother that I remember. Jason going back to when he was with 3-6 Mafia. He's rapping. Most of y'all don't know that about Jason. Jason was rapping. I wasn't no rapper. I wasn't for the jump. I was puffy, man. I was on the videos, dancing. Don't want you to go to death row though. But that's what we did. I seen him come up through business, and I had him, in 27, a year before Jason passed away, I had him come speak to a retail team that I was leading in the banking industry. Did a phenomenal job. If you remember Jason Daniels, you knew how he spoke. You knew what he was about. Brought the house down, man. Jason came. Philip Ashley Ricks came. I appreciate him coming. Them two brothers tore the house down, man. I had the whole team of branch managers requesting them to come back. This is a year before Jason passed away. He was on episode 33 towards the beginning of 2018. Jason Daniels, man. Every time I see a Titan electrical truck, man, it brings 2 tears to my eyes. I was feeling down one day a few months ago. I was having a challenge day. I went out. I just walked out on Poplar here from Clark Tower. I was walking over to the Kroger across the street. Came back. There was a Titans electrical truck at the stop sign. I knew that was Jason, man. I knew that was him. And listen, y'all know I don't come with all the religious. I'm not the most religious guy. I don't put everything on God and the devil. But, man, I felt good with my guy coming by. I don't know who was driving that Titans electrical van, but it made me think of my guy, Jason Daniels, who passed away last year. It'll be a year in October, right after his 40th birthday. Big things he was going to do. Let me be a part of everything. Always accepted me. Said, Ronnie B, man, come on out. Anything he had going on. If I had something going on that he could make, he was there. And I was the same way for him. So shout out to those two brothers, Brunell E. Smith II, Jason Daniels. Because I greatly appreciate them. All right. Guests that I've had. Chris Eagleston. Brother that I've known for probably longer than either one of us would care to admit. Played football against each other in high school. He's had his challenges, but I appreciate him for the energy that he brought on his episode. One of my first early guests. When some people that say they come on and they renege or they just flat out say no because the vanity metrics weren't big enough. Ron, how many likes and shares you got? Chris said, man, no, come on, let's do it. I appreciate that. Having faith, in me when, it's not the big sexy thing. Everybody can jump on the big sexy thing. If Charlamagne calls you or DJ Envy or Angela call you to be on the Breakfast Club, that's easy. But I appreciate him, and there's no knock on them. That's a great thing. And you go do that if they call. But for him to take the time early on with something that nobody was hardly even listening to, come on, man. I appreciate that. Brittany Thornton, candidate for, I believe, District 4 for Memphis City Council. Owner of Juice Orange Mound. Thank you. She jumped on early. She came out to my office when I had boxes stacked up against the back. and she's been on 2 of my episodes, by the way. Thank you, Brittany. I appreciate that. I do. I appreciate that. Paul Young. Memphis Housing Authority. Jumped on the podcast early. I appreciate that. He didn't have to do that. I didn't have even at that point, I didn't have a ton of audience. But the fact that he jumped on, you know what I mean? And talked about what he had going on in the city and his role meant a lot to me, man. Yep, it meant a lot to me. Dominic says, Brunell was so important to us entrepreneurs here in the city, always advocating for us. We miss him dearly. Yes, I agree with that, my brother. I agree with that.
I have a quick question for you.
Liv, please jump in.
Okay, I have a question for you. had so many guests, so many interesting guests, and one would like to know, what would you say was by far the most amusing guest? I mean, I'm sure you have tons of stories in terms of, you know, the reaction of folks, or because obviously the premise of what you talk about is business, but you've had all different types of guests. But I'm curious to know, what would you say was the most kind of, like, the most amusing guest that you've had on your show?
Are you saying, Liv, abusing from a humor standpoint? Or? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that, you know, someone that is near and dear to both our hearts. So I've had Shay Brown on 2 different episodes with the podcast. Yeah. And Shay has, as you know, and familiar with Shay, Shay has a fairly unique personality in that she's polished as well as slightly rough, kind of around the edges, and she's very to the point. She's very direct. And so having shows with her is always interesting because you got to buckle your seatbelt with Shay. And by the way, she's got Skills and Heels coming to the Binge Podcast Network here later this month. But, you know, so Shay is very entertaining. I mentioned Chris Eaglestead. He was very entertaining. Rochelle Smith, who you actually brought on, who I was going to shout out later, but since we're talking now, Liv, Rochelle was very entertaining for someone in her profession, which is a little rare. She brought a nice combination, I thought, in her interview of someone who's polished and professional as a certified financial planner, but I think she does it in a fun enough way to where it's not boring and dry. And so her interview was very good. Yeah, it was very unique, and I got a nice response to her in that regard because it's a little different than what you normally would have or normally would find in in an interview, particularly on a business podcast. Because one of the challenges on a business podcast is just that. Like I mentioned earlier, Liv, I never wanted this to be NPR. So I'm not going to be the dry Ron Brooks that gets on and says, okay, in today's news, President Trump, combed his hair again. You know what I mean? That ain't me.
Right.
So I felt, those folks, in terms of just the most entertainment value, that would be my answer.
Okay.
So, and that's just me.
Was there ever an interview that you felt, that was kind of, that kind of touched your heart a bit? Yeah. A soror of mine, Crystal DeBerry, when her episode earlier this year was very touching because as someone, and a matter of fact, congratulations to her, she recently delivered another baby. So her and her husband, DB, are growing their family, but she was very introspective in terms of sharing her situation. And it's on the podcast. You can go back and listen to that episode. But that was a very good episode because she shared from a wife's perspective, being in business and having your husband incarcerated when you've got young children. And as a black mother and a wife who is watching federal agents come into her house and remove her husband, extract her husband, her black husband, and send him to imprison him in front of their children while she's pregnant, I believe, if I remember that correctly. She was even expecting at the time. And for her to still drive her business, her nonprofit, and hold down the fort, and then support him as he came back into society, that was powerful, man, having her sit right there next to me. And I wasn't expecting her to go that deep because I don't try to, remove scars from people. I'm not, what's her name? Fix your life. You know what I mean? Right.
That's not me. Okay, so
Right.
I'm not there to try to, I'm not Barbara Walters. I'm not trying to ask you, tell me about your childhood. So everybody breaks down and starts crying. You know what I mean?
Right.
So for her to go that deep is big. What's that?
No, I was saying that you made her comfortable enough so that she really went deep, she felt very comfortable.
Yes. And that's very true. And I appreciate that because it made for such, and again, for people who deal with that, right? You don't really find that on business podcasts where people get that personally introspective. Most business podcasts are, so tell me about your business. Oh, that's cool. How'd you do that? What would you be if you weren't doing that? That's the cookie cutter. You can find that a dime a dozen. What I like to do is what's the best practice, and let's dig into, as much as you like. And like you said, she felt comfortable, Liv, getting into it like that deep. And that was one that tugged at my heartstrings a lot because, and it's not, she didn't have one child. Okay. You're talking about multiple children. You're talking about family on each side. And y'all know how that is, MYB, dealing with family. And imagine, family when the husband's going to prison. And you ain't talking about he lost his job or he, or he was injured on the job or something. You're talking about, he's extracted and tried and prosecuted, found guilty, whether right or wrong, and sent to prison. Imagine what some of your family members would say, and you have to deal with that. And she holds him down during this. Okay? While running the business and caring for children. With no subsidies, there's no retired grandma that sits there and watches the kids while you run and do everything you want to do. And nothing against if you do have that. But everybody doesn't. Okay? So, and many of you that are listening have that story. You weren't government subsidized. There was no bank of mama and daddy. There was no everybody 80 years old sitting at home. Or aunties that are 45 years old sitting at home that can watch your baby from dusk till dawn while you go do what you have to do. And when you're trying to do that, there's just an extra kudos to those people. So that's a long way of me answering your question, Liv.
No, but it sounds like it was an interesting interview. I mean, the fact that she had to, not only, continue her business, but manage her household. And I really would like to check that interview out. Do you know what number it is?
Let's see. That was episode, I could tell you, let's see. What episode was that? I don't want to try to think too much off the top of my head. So I want to say it was early this year, number 78. So if you go Live and you check out episode number 78, you'll probably shed a tear. So keep Kleenex close by.
Okay, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So no.
That's where you're, and I know you probably wasn't expecting her to go that deep. Trying to identify guests on your show, people tend to put it in sort of a box. Well, my podcast is about business, so I am going to only identify business owners. This is where your creativity comes into play because it's a reality. There are people out there who have been in that type of situation. For whatever reason, their loved one or spouse is heading off to prison, and someone has to keep the money flowing in and managing a household. So that really shows that, you're thinking outside of the box. You thought that this story was worthy enough to be a part of your podcast. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, it could be an instance where a loved one is in the hospital or, But in this case, it was an emergency situation, or it could be someone who's going through a divorce and they no longer have this person as their backup support. So, again, it just shows your creativity to look at your show and understand that this is something that your audience, this is information that your audience could use for their own business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Liv, I appreciate those kind words. And here's the thing about with what I do. So I don't have a ton of pre-written questions. Okay, and I'm not a journalism major by any means. I'm always looking to get better, but I don't do a lot of pre-recording of shows. I don't, I go into a show, I do the homework to understand the person's background as much as I can, and then I let the dialogue between the guests, let that flow. So my questions generally derive from the response that I'm getting, right? So that gives me a much more kind of organic flow. So I don't have an episode where I recorded it a month ago and, I had all these predetermined questions that I was going to answer. That's also a great format for a lot of great content, a lot of great evergreen content. But for me, I had no idea where that was going to go. I'll be honest with y'all. I have no idea where most of these episodes are going to go, whether I'm doing them myself or I've got a guest. I don't know. Liv, when you the day I had a guest back out and you were quick on the horse, you got me Rochelle Smith, and you did that very quick. And I appreciate Rochelle taking time out to do such a quick turnaround with no prep. She had no idea who the hell I was and what she was going to be on, and she did a phenomenal job. But we had no idea where that was going to go. I did quick research on her. I had some idea of what we were going to talk about, and then we just let it go. And one of the things that people have asked me, about doing podcasts is, should they edit? And I'll tell you that my attitude towards editing has always been very poor. So I'm not the best role model for that because I don't do it. All right. The reason I don't do it is, one, I'm too lazy to do it. I'm too lazy to sit there. There are people who are much better at sitting for 3 and 4 hours editing a show, and I'm just not going to do it. I'm busy doing a lot of other things that I value beyond editing the show. So one of the things that you get from me is you get a very raw show. Like, for instance, Liv just dropped off. We got her back. I'm not editing that out. You heard the message where she was calling back, and I had to press 1 to accept her to come back in through my phone system. I don't edit that out. When I record this, it goes right up live. There's pros and cons to that. All right? For me, I don't edit it. And, some of my mindset, too, is I want you to get... I don't want you to miss the imperfections. Because in business, you don't get to edit. Right? When you're up in front of people talking, if you say and you drop the microphone, whatever, there's no one's editing that out in real life. So it helps me, and Liv, this is something that I'm sharing with the audience is by not editing, I feel like it's helped me grow my skill set. And I'm not all the way there, y'all. Not even close. But it's helped me grow the skill set over this time. Go ahead, Liv.
No, I agree. I think that, again, you just being your authentic self and just, letting your audience know, like, I'm a business person just like you. And I'm just using this platform to share what I know and also to be a part of this journey of learning with you guys. So if you see that, the person is calling in, you may hear that. But just know that, this is just my process. My focus is making sure that I, find the right guest to come on to the show, and that each time listeners are listening, that they're able to take away something that they can use towards their business.
Yeah.
Having a podcast today is can be challenging, and obviously you share some of that. But for the most part, you have to be yourself. And there's tons of podcasts, all different types. But I think what sets you aside is when you are comfortable with yourself, and you're like, okay, this is an area that I prefer to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
And don't put yourself necessarily in the box. Just like, for reporters, oftentimes that's what they're looking for. Oftentimes that happens. They love when the unexpected comes because it has the audience tuned in. So when you had the guest come on, and she began to really share in detail about her life, now having to be a single mom with a spouse incarcerated and having to run her own business. You don't get any realer than that. And so, folks have to understand those that are out there that are listening, that are tuning in, and that are interested in pursuing, having their own podcast. These are just some of the things that you can use for your own podcast.
Right.
And you can be able to identify exactly the area that you choose to focus on.
Yeah, exactly, Liv. Great points. Dominic just came on and said, "Oh, editing is not that bad." Yes. So, Dominic does a phenomenal job at editing his podcast to his specifications, which I think is phenomenal. So I don't want to take away from this that it's a negative towards editing at all. If you choose to edit your podcast, it doesn't mean that it's going to take away its authenticity per se. It's just I'm sharing kind of my truth from my perspective. And for me, I just don't invest the time. So my attitude towards it is poor because I don't invest the time into doing it. I let it ride, baby. I'm one take Tony, and I let it ride. And that's what y'all have gotten for now 100 episodes is, I'm kind of I'm the Tony Allen of this. I'm first team, all defense, and I'm going for it. And I'm going to blow some layups like Tony Allen used to do for the Grizzlies. But I'll miss a layup and I'll go down and I'll steal the ball right back and I contribute to winning. And so, whether you choose to edit or not is completely your preference. And it just goes to the character of your show. And so, that's just how I've approached it. And so let me get into shouting out some more guests while we're at that, because I've mentioned several all over the place. Jamal Whitlow joined the podcast, and it was fresh after he had lost in the primary of last year's election. And so I appreciate him taking time. That wasn't the easiest time for him to come on the podcast the same week that you essentially lose out on your opportunity. But I loved his attitude, and I love what he's continuing to do. Dr. Teresa Woodard joined. And, from a medical standpoint in business, it was a really good show of her sharing the importance of business owners and entrepreneurs taking care of yourself. Listen, you can make as much money as you want to make out here, but, from a hospital bed, it's a little tough. Okay? When you're taking 3 or 4 pills a day just to make it through, that's tough. So you got to take care of your health, and she delivered great information and best practices with that. Allison Tibbs, who joined from San Francisco. I appreciate getting the connection to her. Allison Tibbs actually is responsible, believe it or not, for helping me build the San Francisco market as far as listenership for the podcast, with her attention to health as well. And so she joined, and I appreciate her joining on as well. Maurice Woods, one of the few black owners of TV streaming. So the equivalent of your Netflix and your Hulu and all that. Most people don't know that the On channel for Maurice, who's up in the Northeast area, is available and has the exact same content, if not more, than some of those big name streaming services. And so he joined on. Who else? Chris Prefontaine and Zach Beach with Smart Real Estate Coach. They've been mentors for me in real estate, and they're up in Rhode Island. I appreciate them joining and sharing with the audience how you can invest in real estate without using your cash and credit legitimately. So, they joined on. Let's see, who else? I talked about Crystal D. Berry. Scott Reed joined as a legal coach. Roxanne Little, I appreciate her joining. She had a really nice story, too, as she's building it with the support of her husband, her real estate business, and as a military veteran. We definitely appreciate her. Kedma Oy, someone, again, out on the West Coast. Thank her so much. She's got a book coming out. I was able to connect her with some leadership here in Memphis. But she's helping women business owners tremendously, and she has a good story, too, Liv. If you want to check out episode 88, Kedma as someone that over in the Oregon area, she has a really good story of how she started, and she had a tough run with a relationship that left her reeling, and she didn't know what her next move was going to be and what she was going to make. So that's another one. Tom Schwab, who is a podcasting guru, podcast marketing guru. I thank him for joining. Elliot Eddy, who's got the entrepreneur game. And I know I'm going fast to this, y'all. Y'all just go out to rewind and listen to it again. Elliot Eddy joined with the entrepreneur game. Look that up on Google. Again, black-owned entrepreneurship game that's great for adults as well as for children. That's available. It's on sale now. Steve Weibel with creditsuite.com. Thank him for joining. Mark Ritter with MBFS, financial QSO through the credit union space, was phenomenal. A couple weeks ago, I had Gwendolyn Payne, who I'm going to be part of her effort on tomorrow with youth in a Shark Tank style as they present their business. I'm one of the judges. I'm looking forward to that. Jennifer D'Amata with D'Amata Consulting, who helps with kind of digital marketing spaces and things like that. If you go back, Danielle Reed, congratulations to her on a new addition to her family. Joined and gave some great best practices on marketing and advertising, which was phenomenal. Let's see. I'm just trying to go back and think of everything and everybody that's been on. Tamika Hurd with Makita's Cookies allowed me to come in on site. I had Dominic on that particular episode, and just some random people who joined the podcast on that particular episode. I appreciate her doing that. Darren Ballard. I'm sorry. We did a 2-part called Memphis Burning. That's another one you should check out, Liv. Episode 64 and 65 is a 2-part. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about the history of Memphis from a real estate standpoint and how real estate was used to discriminate around this country, but particularly in Memphis. And the story of Robert Church and Boss Crump, who was the mayor, former mayor of Memphis back in the 20s, 30s, and that sort of thing. So there's just been a ton of people that have been supportive. My guy Gil Carter, who joined, talking. He's got a book out now. He's got a nonprofit that works with mothers and fights childhood issues and things like that. That's phenomenal. My guy Gabe Himes, I appreciate him with Universal One Brand, young brother that's doing things out here. Thank you so much for joining. My brother family, Cleo Hayes, Coach Cleo, joining. Elliot the Main Sales with Main T-shirts joined on. I appreciate him doing that. Edward Bogart with So Give joined. We had a really good conversation in the restaurant on the podcast. So thank him for joining. So again, I thank everybody. Oh, I can't forget my guy, my frat, Gerald Jones. We did the episode right after Black Panther came out, which was good. He and I compared and contrast the movie Black Panther, the Marvel movie that came out. Reginald Clark with P3 Financial Group. Thank you, my brother. That's my financial advisor personally. And so I appreciate him joining. And so, again, that's everybody that has joined. Thank you so much for everybody that's done so, for everybody that's going to continue to support the podcast. Thank you so much. Liv, we're coming up on time, but I wanted to get your very quick take on where do you see the future of podcasting?
I think it's the sky is just going to be an open door opportunity, particularly for those individuals who want to, set themselves up as experts in their particular field. This is definitely a great way to, share your expertise. Invite those, individuals that are in your industry to come on to your show. Don't just box yourself in with a particular type. Be open to all different types of guests, which you've done so perfectly well. But the sky's the limit with podcasts. I mean, it is really, really a great way to, promote your business. But it's also, it's a great way to promote your business, but at the same time, you're not necessarily having to, you're not kind of going down their throat with your business.
Yeah.
But in a way, you are promoting it in so many ways. And the fact that you're sharing industry knowledge to your audience, it basically tells them that you are a trusted member of their industry. And so it opens up all sorts of opportunities for you. So it's great. It's a great way to make money. And in terms of, advertising dollars and sponsors, it's a great way to, expand your network and your audience. Oftentimes as business owners, we tend to, obviously we're individuals that like to take a risk because we would not have our businesses.
Right.
We weren't the type of individuals that didn't like to take risks. But at the same time, oftentimes we tend to focus on our network. And we don't like to look outside of our network. And so by having a podcast, this enables you to go outside of your network.
Exactly.
Because so many people are tuning in. And also, too, people are, listening to their podcast on their way to work, at their desk at lunch or, at home. I know for me, oftentimes when I'm working, from home, I'm listening to the podcast because it's a sense of motivation for me.
Right.
To be able to other business owners that are going through the same thing. Because, you may have in your network of friends, in my network of friends, I have educators, school teachers, doctors, lawyers, and, not all of them are in my same type of, not all of them are entrepreneurs.
Right.
And I like that too, sometimes, because I think it gives me, again, it opens me up to other opportunities in other industries. So I like to be able to share that information, with my friends in other industries. But the sky's the limit. I think it's a great opportunity. I think that, some people may think, oh, well, there is a podcast that's just like that. So maybe I won't do that. No, everyone's gonna have a different approach.
Right.
And now there's so many ways of getting guests. If you are on Twitter, years ago I had the opportunity to work with these young men that had a blog radio, but they had their own streaming. And most of our guests were from the internet, from Twitter, because oftentimes, and a lot of our guests were like old school music So we had like the OJs, and they were, it wasn't the father, but it was one of the members of the OJs. And he was sharing stories about touring. It was such a great interview. We also had Stacey Lattisaw, who's out in the DMV area. And she talked about her time, working with Johnny Gill and being a young artist compared to today. And so it was obvious that these were the type of artists that were open to coming on to a show that was unknown, an unknown host. So we had like all the oldies coming on that, most of us listened to when we were children or teenagers. So, so my point is there are so many avenues that you can find guests for your show. Again, you can always go on Twitter. Oftentimes they'll have their email address. It'll say media inquiries or booking. Email them and let them know, hey, I have a podcast. I would love to have you on. You can send a link so that they can, they're able to go to it. But again, I think it's a great opportunity, particularly African American, with businesses. If you are, an author, in real estate, any type of industry, or if you just want to go on and talk about things like mental health, you don't necessarily have a business. Right. But obviously, it's an opportunity to talk about different areas. And, you can have a co-host, you can have a round table discussion where you want to, it could be a type of podcast where, you want to have your girlfriend come on, and it's a sister talk. You know how those could be.
Right.
And it's just having fun. It's like, okay, we're going to figure that the mic is here, and we're just going to enjoy ourselves, have a glass of wine, and we're just going to talk. Obviously, you can have sort of like an agenda to kind of keep you guys, on task in terms of the topic, but I definitely think it's a great opportunity. You're a prime example of to be a successful podcast. So, again, I hope that your listeners that are interested in pursuing the podcast, I know Shay Brown, who actually would like to thank because her, I was introduced to you.
Yes.
And she's coming out with the podcast, sports, I think it's always interesting when you have a woman that loves sports the way she does.
Right.
It's not unusual, because I know plenty of sisters that love sports and could give some of the male sportscasters a run for their money. But she's definitely going to bring it. So I'm definitely looking forward to tuning in to her podcast.
Yes.
But yeah, I hope I answered your question. But yeah, it's open game. It's a great opportunity.
I appreciate that, Liv. And, I think Dominic kind of sums it up. It's being recognized by larger corporations, and now's the time to get in on the ground floor. So I encourage anyone to, if you want to get with Dominic and I, you want to get with my guy Lawrence Thompson, that's helping people with developing their brand around podcasting. But, get you someone that you can work with that you like and you trust, and go ahead and get it started. So, Liv, I can't thank you enough for taking time out to be part of this 100th episode of the Minding Your Business podcast. I'm looking forward to many, many more. And, of course, you and I will stay in touch and definitely look at having more guests and more content. And I'm always looking for additional recommendations, so don't be shy about those. I've got thick skin.
I have some more.
Yeah, so excellent. Yeah. So bring them on. I definitely appreciate that, Liv, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Take care.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye. So that was Olivia Almagro, who joined me today. Again, episode number 100. Thank you again for all guests. Thank you to Dominic Lawson, to Kenda Lawson, with Owls LLC and the Startup Life podcast. Thank you to all the shows that are on the Binge Podcast Network. The Binge! Episode number 100 now is in the books. We've got much more to do. Our work is not done, is never done, because there's more work. Entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. I'm your host, Champ Ron. This is the Minding Your Business podcast.